Hello everyone, how are you today? Let's learn cognitive psychology with me, Bertie. Today, we will learn about paying attention. Let's get started. Selective attention by William James. The skill through which people focus on one task or one input while ignoring the other stimuli that are also on the scene. That is selective attention. Dichotic listening. What is dichotic listening? It is the process of receiving different auditory messages presented simultaneously to each ear. Early studies used dichotic listening. The participants were asked to pay attention to only one of these inputs, the attended channel, and ignore the message in the other ear, the unattended channel. Shadowing. Participants were asked to repeat what they were hearing word for word of the attended channel. What is the summary? People can focus on the attended channel and miss the things in the unattended channel. Words with personal importance are often noticed, although the rest of the unattended channel is blurred. Inhibiting distractors. What do you do with unattended input? You block processing of the input you're not interested in. Early theories of attention. People built a filter that shields them from potential distractors. People let the desired information, which is the attended channel, in for further processing. They don't filter out the attended channel, but they let it in. The inhibition works on a distractor by distractor basis. You have the ability to inhibit your response to some distractors, but you may not be able to do that if there are unexpected distractor comes along. You not only inhibit the processing of distractors, but you also promote the processing of desired stimuli. Inattentional blindness. It is a pattern in which people fail to see an important stimulus, although they are staring at it. Inattentional deafness. Participants fail to hear important stimuli if they are not expecting them. Notes. Your normal ability to see and hear what's around you diminishes in the absence of attention. That means attention is very important. Perception needs more than having a stimulus in front of your eyes. It needs some work. Change blindness. Change blindness is the inability to detect changes in scenes people are looking at. In some change blindness demonstrations, participants see a picture, then a second, then the first again, and must spot the differences between the two pictures. It takes time and effort to locate the differences. Early versus late selection. Early selection. The attended input is selected from the start. The unattended input gets little analysis, thus it is never perceived. Late selection is the other way around. In late selection, all inputs get complete analysis. After the analysis, selection occurs. Just before the stimuli reach consciousness, the selection occurs, that we are aware only of the intended input. Or perhaps the selection occurs later on so that all inputs make it to consciousness, but then the selection occurs that enables only the attended input remembered. Attention can influence activity levels in LGN, or lateral geniculate nucleus. Attention is changing the signal's flow within the nervous system before the signals reach the brain. Selection via priming. Priming needs two things: visual experience, if the detectors have been used recently or frequently in the past, and your expectations on what the stimulus will be. To repeat it, priming needs visual experience and your expectations on what the stimulus will be. To do priming, you need to spend some effort or locate resources. Therefore, there is a limit on how much priming you can do. Selective listening. You've been instructed to ignore the unattended input. That's why there is no reason to devote any resource to this unattended input. Therefore, the detectors for the unattended message are unprimed. That's why it's difficult to hear the distractor. However, sometimes leak happens. You still hear the unattended input, for example, your name. When your name is called, then you suddenly hear that. Even though you don't mean to hear your name, that happens because the detectors for the stimuli are already primed. You're, of course, very familiar with your own name. You have encountered these stimuli in the past. That's why the detectors' activation level are already high. No need to prime them. There are two types of priming: stimulus-based priming and expectation-based priming. What are the differences? How to produce the stimulus-based priming? The stimulus-based priming is produced by a presentation of the priming stimulus without expectation. Expectation-based priming is created when participants believe the prime enables a prediction of what's to come. In another word, expectation-based priming has an expectation. How about the cost? The stimulus-based priming is free. We can prime one detector without taking anything away from the other detectors. Expectation-based priming has a cost. With high validity primes, responses in the misled condition were slower than those in the neutral condition. The misled reveals the limited capacity system. Notes: selective attention requires work, limited mental resources, some process or capacity for performance, but in limited supply. Spatial attention. The mechanism through which someone focuses on a particular position in space. Results from a trial conducted by Posner shows that high validity priming benefits from cues that correctly signal where the upcoming target will appear. When participants were misled with the arrow, 12% were slower than those in the neutral condition. Evidence of limited capacity system, because they have to focus on different things. They had limited capacity. They had to divide their attention. Attention as a spotlight. What's going on in the brain when you move attention? The orienting system needs to disengage attention from one target Shift attention to a new target, then engage attention on the new target. The alerting system maintains an alert state in the brain. The executive system controls voluntary actions. Certain neural mechanisms enable you to adjust your sensitivity to certain inputs. A large of paying attention involves priming. You don't bother to prime yourself for the stimuli you're not interested in. Thus, those stimuli fall on unprepared and unresponsive detectors. On the other hand, for the stimuli that you care about, you anticipate the input, use the anticipation to prime the relevant processing channel. Thus, this increases your sensitivity to the desired input. How do we focus on what we see? Ultra-rare item effect, a pattern in which rare items are often overlooked. For example, in the textbook in cognitive psychology, there is an example when you walk on a forest, even if there is a staple there on the ground, you may not see it because you don't expect a staple to be on the ground in the forest. In this case, then the staple is an ultra rare item effect. You don't expect to see a staple in the forest. Different cultures have different ways in paying attention. Westerners focus on individual people, individual objects, and attributes. East Asians are more collectivists. They focus on ways people are linked to and shaped by the people around them. They are encouraged to think more holistically, with focus on the context and how people and objects are related to one another. Endogenous versus exogenous control of attention. Endogenous control of attention, that means you choose what you pay attention to. Exogenous control of attention, it means the elements of the scene seize your attention whether you like it or not. Attending to objects or positions. Pay attention to the objects rather than to position in space. In other cases, attention is influenced by object boundaries. The data from various studies examining the brain activation pattern when participants are attending to a particular object suggest that the task involves different brain circuits. One set of circuits, the dorsal attention system, near the top of the head, is concerned primarily with spatial attention. A different set of circuits, the ventral attention system, is for non-spatial tasks. Perceiving and the limits on cognitive capacity. Your ability to pay attention depends on your ability to anticipate the upcoming stimulus. The anticipation depends on many factors. If you understand the materials, it's easier to anticipate them. Divided attention. What affects this divided attention? The specificity of resources, how specific is the resources, the generality of resources, are they general or very specific, and the executive control. The mechanisms to control your thoughts. Executive control helps your current goal in mind to guide your action. It also organizes mental steps into the right sequence that will move you towards your goal or to shift plans or strategies if current operations don't move towards your goal. Executive control can handle only one task at one time. It limits your ability on multitasking or dividing attention. It's important when you do just a single task. Patients with frontal lesions have these two problems: preservation error and goal neglect. Preservation error is the tendency to produce the same response over and over, even when the task requires a change in response. Goal neglect fail to organize their behavior to move them toward their goals. Tips. Practice diminishes resource demand. If you practice a lot doing the same thing, then you won't need the same amount of resource next time. Automaticity. Tasks well practiced and involve no or little control. As you do something over and over again, then it becomes kind of automated that you don't need to have so much control because it becomes like automatic. What are the limits? What affects attention? Different types of resources, the nature of the task. For example, the resources required for a verbal task, for example, reading, are different from those required for a special task, for example, remembering a shape. What sets the limits on divided attention? If two tasks have competing demands on task general resources, the energy supply or executive control, the result will be interference. If tasks involve similar stimuli, for example, both involve printed text or both involve speech, these stimuli can blur together that it may compromise your performance. That's it for today. Thank you so much for learning cognitive psychology with me. Hope to see you again next time. Thank you and see ya!